This lake belongs to the HOA. You have 72 hours to leave. My HOA president said this. The same woman who sold me this property 6 months ago. Now, claiming the lake I built with $50,000 is community property. I own this land, I said. She smiled. Not for long. A patrol car arrived. The officer knew my exact mortgage amount. Only 3 people should know that number. Me, my bank, and her. That's when I realized this was planned from the beginning. But they made one mistake, one tiny detail, and it cost them everything. Comment if someone tried taking what's yours. 2 years ago, I made what I thought was the smartest investment of my life. $50,000. That's not a number you throw around lightly when you're a 41-year-old landscape contractor with a second mortgage and a business loan that keeps you up at night. But when I looked at that property 3 acres, with an old dried-up lake bed that nobody had touched in decades, I saw something nobody else did. I saw legacy. I saw my nephew Tommy, 8 years old with his gap-toothed grin, learning to fish. I saw families gathering on summer evenings. I saw something real in a world that felt increasingly digital and disconnected. So, I signed the papers, shook hands with Maria Rogers, my real estate agent, professional smile, and got to work. 18 months it took me. $67,000 for the second mortgage, $28,000 for the business loan. Every weekend, every spare hour, I was out there. Excavation, liner installation, filtration systems, landscaping, stocking the lake with bass and bluegill. Tommy would come help sometimes, dragging buckets of gravel and asking a million questions about ecosystems. The day we released the first fish, he looked up at me with those big eyes and said, "Uncle Joe, this is the coolest thing you've ever done." I took a photo of him holding that first base. I still carry it in my wallet. That moment made every dollar, every drop of sweat, worth it. The grand opening was something out of a dream. 40 neighbors showed up for the barbecue. Kids running everywhere, parents actually talking to each other instead of staring at phones. The whole community coming alive around this water feature that hadn't existed a year before. Property values jumped 30% practically overnight. Homes that were worth $280,000 were suddenly assessed at $364. Everybody wins, I remember thinking. This is what community is supposed to feel like. Maria was there too, taking photos, shaking hands, telling people how wonderful it was. "Joseph, this really increases our neighborhood appeal," she said, and I believed her enthusiasm was genuine. I saw her taking measurements with her phone at one point, figured she was gathering material for property listings. Real estate agent doing real estate agent things. But then came the weird stuff, small things at first. I'd catch Maria around the property at odd times, always with some reasonable explanation. "Just checking the perimeter for HOA purposes," she'd say. One evening, I walked up to her car just as she was tucking away this thick document, caught a glimpse of a letterhead with the word development on it. She got flustered, fumbled it under her seat. "Just listing materials, you know how it is." She laughed it off, and I shrugged it away. Why would I suspect my real estate agent, my HOA president, of anything shady? Then she hit me with the official request. Walked right up during one of Tommy's fishing sessions, all business. "Joseph, I hate to interrupt, but the HOA needs your equipment insurance certificate. Standard liability assessment for properties adjacent to your lake. Just procedure. Made perfect sense." I went inside, printed out the full certificate, $8,000 for the filtration system, $4,500 for the aerator, $2,800 for the pump, and $3,200 for the UV sterilizer. Every piece of equipment is listed with costs, vendors, purchase dates, and financing details. She photographed each page with her phone, thanked me professionally, and left. I thought I was being a good neighbor, helping the HOA do its due diligence. The next morning, I found my filtration system destroyed. Not vandalized, destroyed. The intake valve had been carefully unscrewed, not smashed. Control panel wires were cleanly cut, not torn. This was surgical, deliberate, $3,000 in damage, and I couldn't afford many more hits like that. So, I did what any paranoid property owner would do. I installed security cameras. 4 of them, covering every angle, with night vision and motion detection. Cost me $800 I didn't really have, but I needed to know if this was going to keep happening. That night, reviewing the footage, I found something that made my skin crawl. 11:47 p.m., a car pulls up. Maria steps out. But she's not alone. She's got professional surveying equipment. Laser measurer, tablet, clipboard, the works. For 20 minutes, she's measuring my property boundaries with the precision of someone planning construction, taking detailed notes, photographing survey markers, and then, clear as day on the audio, I hear her make a phone call. "I have all the numbers you need," she says. "Equipment costs, financing details, everything. Send your people tomorrow morning." I sat there in my kitchen, watching this footage loop, trying to make sense of it. Send your people? What people? Maybe she was planning some HOA project, I told myself. Maybe this was about neighborhood improvements. But that voice in the back of my head, the one that had kept me alive in business for 15 years, was screaming that something was very, very wrong. I woke up the next morning to the sound of a car door slamming, 8:47 a.m. Exactly the time I pour my first cup of coffee. A detail I'd never mentioned to anyone, just part of my routine. Through the window, I caught sight of a man in what looked like county attire stepping out of a vehicle. Badge glinting, clipboard tucked under his arm. He walked toward my porch like this was routine business. My hand hovered on the knob as the knock came. I opened the door. "Mr. Harris?" he asked, voice clipped and official. He didn't wait for me to confirm. He glanced down at his clipboard, ready to speak, and whatever came next froze me before he even finished the sentence. $67,000. That's what Officer Bradley said. Not approximately 65 to 70,000. Not somewhere in that range. $67,000. The exact amount of my second mortgage was signed 3 weeks prior. I stood there in my doorway, brain scrambling like a computer trying to load too many programs at once, and all I could think was, how? How does a county compliance officer know the precise figure from my private banking documents? How do you know that number? I managed to get out. He smiled, not warm, not cold, just professional. "Mr. Harris, we conduct thorough investigations before issuing citations. The county has access to property records, loan documentation, and permit databases." He handed me a citation printed on official-looking paper. "You've constructed an unauthorized water recreational facility. That's a $50,000 investment, your second mortgage of $67,000 through Midwest Home Loans, and a commercial business loan of $28,000 from First National Bank. That's substantial risk for someone your age, especially for an unpermitted commercial operation." The citation listed violations I didn't understand. Unauthorized water recreational facility, $5,000. Commercial operation without proper permitting, $7,000. Environmental modification without EPA clearance, $3,000. Total fines, $15,000. Court date in 30 days. There was even a QR code for convenient online payment. Bradley, that's what his badge said. Officer Bradley, County Compliance Division, handed me his card and walked back to his car like he'd just delivered a pizza. I stood there holding this paper, watching him drive away, and something felt wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something about the whole interaction felt off. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table and really examined the citation. I pulled out an old building permit from a deck I'd constructed 2 years ago, legitimate county paperwork. Laid them side by side. The fonts were similar. The layout was close. But that watermark. I held both pages up to the light. The county permit had a watermark that was perfectly centered. This citation, the word authority was shifted. Not much, maybe a millimeter, maybe less. The font weight looked slightly different too. The county used a slightly bolder typeface. And the paper texture, while close, felt more like commercial security paper you'd buy at an office supply store, not the contractor-specific stock the government used. Maybe they changed printers, I thought. Maybe different departments use different templates. But that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. That's when Diane Fletcher knocked on my door. She lived across the street, 60 years old, sharp-eyed, the kind of neighbor who never missed details. We'd only exchanged greetings before, but now her tone was urgent. "Joseph, I used to spend 20 years investigating insurance fraud. I saw that man at your door this morning, that citation he gave you. Can I take a look?" Desperate for clarity, I handed it over. Diane scanned the paper with practiced eyes, and within half a minute, her expression shifted. "Joseph, this layout, I've seen forgeries with these same flaws." She pointed at details I'd noticed and some I hadn't. The reference number used a format the county didn't use. CD 2025-8847-WR instead of the fiscal year-based system the county actually employed. The paper quality was commercial grade. The watermark alignment was off. "I'm not certain," she said carefully, "but this has the hallmarks of sophisticated forgery." She opened her laptop right there on my porch, pulled up the citation's QR code, scanned it with her phone. It redirected to a professional-looking website, county logo, legal language, the works. But Diane ran a whois lookup right in front of me. The domain was registered 8 months ago. 8 months. The county's actual website would be decades old. Registered through an anonymous service, paid for with a credit card, hosted by a budget company. Then she did something I didn't even know was possible. She called the registrar. Just picked up her phone and called them, using what she said were old investigator contacts. 5 minutes later, she had a name. The domain was paid for by a business credit card belonging to Apex Security Solutions, LLC. She ran another search. Owner, Bradley Turner. Not Officer Bradley, just Bradley Turner. Business category, private investigation and consulting services. No law enforcement license, no government contractor status, nothing that would give him the authority to issue official citations. "Who has access to your financial documents from when you bought this property?" Diane asked, and I felt my stomach drop. "Maria," I said. "Maria Rogers. She was my real estate agent. She handled the whole closing. She'd have copies of my mortgage applications, loan approvals, bank statements, everything." Diane's expression went grim. "Then she could have given them to this Bradley Turner. The question is why." We sat there for a moment, both of us processing. Then Diane pulled up one more document, business filing records. Apex Security Solutions, LLC, Suite 244, Commerce Street. She pulled up another search. Rogers Premier Properties, Suite 240, same building, 4 doors apart. Maria and this fake cop were literal office neighbors. But that wasn't what made me grab the edge of the table. It was the third document Diane showed me, a business license application from 3 months prior. It required listing primary service clients. There were 4 names on that list. 3 I didn't recognize. I did. One that made everything suddenly, terrifyingly clear. Diane was pulling up another search result when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her face changed. Not scared. Something else. She showed me the text message. Unknown number. No words. Just a photo. It was taken from across the street, through my living room window. Clear view of us sitting at my kitchen table. The laptop open between us, showing our research. And in the bottom corner of the photo, a timestamp. From 3 minutes ago. Whoever took it was still out there, still watching. And they wanted us to know it. The emergency HOA meeting was called, with exactly 48 hours notice. Technically illegal, our bylaws required 7 days for non-emergency sessions. But Maria Rogers knew most people wouldn't actually check the rules. I showed up to find 19 residents in the community center out of 47 total households. Not even half. Maria stood at the front with a laptop connected to a projector, professional as ever, like she was presenting a corporate merger instead of trying to destroy my life. Her PowerPoint was polished. Too polished. Aerial photos of my lake. When had she taken those? Charts showing alleged traffic increases with no data sources listed. Bullet points about liability exposure and insurance concerns. Stock photos of overcrowded public pools labeled as safety risks. She built her case like a lawyer, using language designed to sound protective while actually being aggressive as hell. "I move that the HOA adopt a resolution," she read from her screen, voice steady and businesslike, "temporarily suspending any marketing, promotion, or public association of properties within HOA boundaries with the lake facility, pending legal clarification of its status and verification of appropriate permitting and insurance documentation." Translation: nobody in the neighborhood could mention my lake in property listings, on social media, or in any community events until Maria decided otherwise. It was a gag order dressed up as community protection. Mr. Clark, 68 years old, retired teacher, sharp as they come, stood up. "Maria, you personally sold me my house 3 years ago. Your listing specifically advertised exclusive lakefront community access with upcoming amenity. I still have the printout." Maria barely blinked. "That was aspirational language about future community improvements, Mr. Clark. We all want proper permitting to be in place." He wasn't backing down. "You're lying. Your listing said planned lake restoration by local contractor. You knew about this before Joseph even started." Her expression went cold. Professional smile disappeared. "Mr. Clark, this meeting is about current community safety, not parsing past marketing copy. We need to protect all homeowners' interests. Vote, please. 12 people voted for the suspension. 3 voted against Mr. Clark, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, and Diane, who had joined the HOA just to have a voice in this meeting. One person, Kevin Walsh, a property manager who owned rental units in the neighborhood, voted present, clearly trying to avoid conflict. The motion passed. Just like that, my lake became untouchable. But here's the thing that made it even worse. After the meeting, Diane checked the metadata on the announcement email, created at 6:30 p.m., scheduled to send at 7:52. But the meeting was at 8 p.m. Maria had written that email before the meeting even started. She'd secured the votes in advance. This wasn't democracy, this was theater. Within 3 hours of that meeting, my phone started ringing. First call was from Morrison Estate, a $45,000 landscaping project I'd been working on for months. Joseph, we've been made aware of legal disputes involving your business operations. We're uncomfortable proceeding. We've hired someone else. Click. Second call, Riverside Corporate Campus, $68,000 for a grounds redesign. Our legal team reviewed your HOA situation. We can't risk associating with potential permit violations. Contract terminated per our agreement clause. The third call was just an email. Westfield Mall, $92,000 for a landscape renovation. Community concerns regarding your operations have come to our attention. We're exercising our right to termination. $205,000, gone, in one afternoon. Not because of my work quality, not because of anything I actually did wrong, because one email from an HOA president included the words legal concerns, and nobody bothered to verify if it was true. But you want to know what really broke me? It wasn't the money. It was Tuesday evening when Tommy came over to fish like he always did, and he asked me why his best friend Jake wasn't allowed to play with him anymore. Jake's mom had gotten the HOA email, the one that went to all residents and local businesses, the one with carefully weaponized language about refraining from publicly associating properties with the disputed amenity for liability protection. It created a social freeze without explicitly ordering a boycott. Neighbors stopped bringing their kids to the lake. Tommy's friends weren't allowed to visit our property. Social media posts that had tagged the lake got quietly deleted. That Saturday morning, which used to bring 8 to 10 families for fishing and picnics, brought exactly 0. And Tommy, 8 years old with his gap-toothed smile fading, looked up at me with tears in his eyes and asked, "Uncle Joe, did we do something wrong?" I had no answer that would make sense to a child. How do you explain that adults can be this petty, this cruel, over property and money? That evening, after Tommy went home, I met Diane at a coffee shop 2 miles from the neighborhood. She'd called earlier and said she'd filed a police report, a real one, with an actual detective. His name was Tom Morgan, 40 years old, a 15-year veteran of the county sheriff's department, and he'd been investigating since Diane first contacted him. He'd verified everything. Badge number CD8847 didn't exist in any county database. Not law enforcement, not compliance, not code enforcement, nothing. Citation format didn't match any official county templates he'd obtained for comparison. Bradley Turner had no law enforcement license whatsoever in the state registry. Apex Security Solutions had exactly 0 government contracts in public records. "Mr. Harris," Detective Morgan said, stirring sugar into his coffee like we were discussing baseball scores instead of a criminal conspiracy, "I have probable cause that you're the victim of fraud and impersonation of law enforcement, both felonies. But here's my problem. Defense attorneys will argue this is just an aggressive business dispute or a misunderstanding. I need more evidence before I can get arrest warrants. I need Bradley Turner and Maria Rogers on record, explicitly describing their criminal conspiracy. Can you help me document everything? Every interaction, every communication, every tactic they use?" That night, I still couldn't sleep, pacing the hallway instead of closing my eyes. Around 2:47 in the morning, my phone buzzed on the counter. A single image appeared. Tommy at school, standing by the bike racks with his friends. No words, no caption, just the picture, delivered in the dead of night. My stomach dropped. Someone had been close enough to him in daylight and wanted me to know it. My hands were shaking when I called Detective Morgan. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting for something exactly like this. His voice was different when he spoke, colder, more focused. "They just crossed a line," he said. "Now we can really go after them. If someone sent you a photo of your kid or someone you love with no explanation at 2 a.m., what would be your first move? Comment, because I genuinely want to know if I did the right thing. 1 week after Detective Morgan told me he was building a case, Diane showed up at my door with her laptop and an expression I'd come to recognize as her "I found something big" face. She'd spent the past 7 days doing what she did best, investigating. Using databases and contacts from her 20-year career in insurance fraud, she'd been tracking Apex Security Solutions, LLC, through business registries, court records, and lawsuit filings. What she found made my situation look like a practice run. "Joseph," she said, spreading printouts across my kitchen table, "Bradley Turner has been doing this for 4 years, 3 states. I've found 22 documented cases with the exact same pattern. 22 families. 22 businesses. 22 people were terrorized by fake government officials into panic decisions that cost them everything." She'd tracked down one case in Nebraska, 2 years old. A civil lawsuit buried in county records, Wilson versus Henderson Development Corporation. The Wilsons had mentioned unauthorized EPA inspections in their complaint, using the exact same language that appeared in my fake citation. Diane cold-called them. Eleanor Wilson answered on the 3rd ring, her voice shaky even before Diane explained why she was calling. "You're investigating the same people who took our farm?" Eleanor asked, and I could hear the hope and pain mixed together in her voice through the speakerphone. Diane asked if Eleanor would tell us what happened, and after a long pause, Eleanor said yes. She needed someone to know, someone who might be able to stop them. Here's what Eleanor and her husband Frank lost. 40 acres of family farmland they'd inherited from Eleanor's parents, worth approximately $450,000 based on comparable sales in the area. A neighbor, Henderson Development Corporation, had offered them $270,000, a lowball offer at 60% of fair market value. Eleanor and Frank refused. They wanted to keep the land in the family, maybe pass it to their grandchildren someday. 3 weeks later, a man in an EPA uniform showed up at their door, cited them for soil contamination violations, requiring $35,000 in remediation work. 1 week after that, a different man claiming to be a county agricultural compliance officer cited water runoff violations needing $28,000 in drainage system installation. Another week, a state land use division inspector, or so he claimed, cited zoning violations requiring $42,000 in corrective measures. Total alleged violations, $105,000. They were given 60 days to fix everything or face criminal charges for environmental crimes. Eleanor and Frank were in their 70s. They didn't have $105,000 lying around. They didn't have money for lawyers to fight 3 different government agencies. Terrified of going to jail, they panicked and sold the farm to Henderson Development for $270,000. Lost $180,000 compared to the fair market value. 1 year later, they discovered the truth by accident. The new owners had exactly 0 violations on record. Eleanor called the real EPA. No inspections had ever been scheduled for their property. No case existed in any database. The statute of limitations had passed. The sale was legally binding. Their family's 3-generation legacy was gone, stolen by men in fake uniforms. "We lost everything," Eleanor said through the phone, her voice cracking on the word everything. "My parents built that farm from nothing. We lost our retirement security, and there was nothing we could do. I sat there listening to this 72-year-old woman describe the same terror I was feeling, and something shifted in me. This wasn't just about my lake anymore. This was about making sure Bradley Turner never did this to anyone else." Diane had found another case. Arizona, 18 months ago. Martinez versus Westgate Properties, LLC. Rachel Martinez, 38 years old, had owned a coffee shop called Rachel's Roast with a rental property above it. Landlord dispute over a 40% rent increase that Rachel refused. She had 3 years left on her lease at the current rate. The landlord threatened eviction for lease violations. 2 weeks later, 3 inspectors appeared. Health department uniform, citing food safety violations, improper refrigeration temperatures for $8,000, inadequate ventilation for $10,000. Fire marshal uniform the next week, citing egress violations for $15,000 and insufficient fire suppression for $12,000. Building inspector uniform after that, citing structural concerns for $17,000 and electrical code violations for $8,000. Total fake citations, $70,000. Rachel had just passed a health inspection 2 months prior with a perfect score. But when you're a small business owner, and 3 different government agencies are telling you you're operating an unsafe establishment, threatening to revoke your license and file criminal charges if anyone gets hurt, you don't have the resources to verify each citation independently. Rachel closed her coffee shop, defaulted on her rental property mortgage, lost both properties, filed for bankruptcy, total losses, approximately $220,000 when you factor in business value and property equity. 3 months later, a new restaurant opened in that exact location. 0 violations, 0 citations. Rachel called the real health department. Her shop had never been cited in their records. By then, she was living with her parents, financially destroyed, unable to afford lawyers to go after anyone. Detective Morgan coordinated a video call with all of us. Me, Diane, Eleanor, her husband Frank, and Rachel. 6 people across 4 states, connected by the same criminal operation. We spread out our evidence like detectives in a movie. Eleanor produced her citations from 2 years ago, same 1mm watermark error on every document. Rachel showed hers, identical formatting, same wrong reference number system, same QR code redirect pattern. My citation matched perfectly. All of us had been hired through property disputes. All of us had been terrorized by people who looked and sounded like legitimate government officials. "This is interstate fraud," Detective Morgan said, and I could see him taking notes on a legal pad even through the video feed. "With multiple victims across state lines, I can involve the FBI. We're looking at federal racketeering charges, RICO prosecution. These carry 20-year sentences." Eleanor spoke up, her voice stronger now. "We want justice. Frank and I are elderly, but we'll testify. We'll do whatever it takes." Frank, who'd been quiet the whole call, added simply, "We lost everything. If our story helps stop them, then it means something." Rachel nodded. "I've been living with my parents for 18 months, trying to rebuild my credit, my life. I'll do whatever's necessary to make sure he never does this again." After the call ended, my phone rang. Eleanor calling back. "Joseph," she said, and I could hear Frank in the background telling her not to, but she kept talking. "There's something we didn't mention, something Frank made me promise not to tell anyone, but after hearing your story, I can't keep quiet anymore." She paused, and I heard her take a breath. "After we lost the farm, we hired someone to investigate, not a lawyer, someone who knew how to find things that weren't supposed to be found. He worked on our case for 3 days. Then he showed up at our house at midnight, returned our money in cash, and told us 2 things. Stop digging and never say his name to anyone. Joseph had found something about the people behind this that made a man who had been shot at twice in his career too scared to keep working." Long pause. I could hear my own heartbeat. "He said there were others. Not just Bradley, not just fake cops. He said the operation had a name. When is it smarter to walk away from the truth than to keep digging? Have you ever been in a situation where someone warned you to stop asking questions? Week 2 of this nightmare started with Maria launching an attack on a platform I won't name, but that every HOA in America uses for neighborhood communication. She posted in our community group a carefully worded message designed to sound concerned rather than accusatory. "Several homeowners have approached me about the impact of unpermitted commercial activity on our community insurance rates," she wrote. "Our neighborhood insurance provider contacted me this week, asking specific questions about recreational facility modifications in our area. Has anyone else received insurance inquiries? I'm genuinely worried this situation could affect all our premiums this renewal cycle." Within 10 minutes, comments appeared from accounts I recognized as her allies. Someone claimed their insurance company had asked about water features. Another said their premium quote came back $40 per month higher, with mentions of increased community risk factors. A third asked if the lake was even safe for kids if it wasn't permitted properly. I tried to respond, typed out, "There are no permit issues, the lake is on my private property, but my comment disappeared the second I hit post. Then I got a notification that I'd been removed from the group for disrupting community safety dialogue. Maria, as group administrator, had banned me from defending myself. 3 neighbors actually called their insurance companies after seeing her post. Diane verified none of those companies had any prior inquiries on record, but the perception was created. The narrative was set. I was costing everyone money. 2 more potential clients canceled landscape consultations, citing insurance concerns they'd heard about. Tuesday evening, 9:30 p.m., Kevin Walsh showed up at my door. Kevin managed 4 rental properties in our neighborhood. His entire income depended on maintaining good relationships with the HOA and keeping tenants happy. He looked uncomfortable, kept glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone to jump out of the bushes. "Joseph, I need to tell you something," he said, and I could tell from his voice this wasn't a friendly visit. "Maria approached me yesterday. She offered me $5,000. I felt my stomach drop. For what?" He took a breath. "To testify at a hearing about business disruptions caused by your lake. She wants me to say my tenants complained about noise, parking problems, strangers coming through the neighborhood, and safety concerns affecting property values. She showed me documentation, a petition with neighbor signatures, witness statements, and traffic studies. Said everyone was already on board and I'd just be confirming community consensus." I looked at him. "Did your tenants actually complain?" Kevin shook his head. "Opposite. 2 tenants specifically mentioned the lake as a reason they renewed their leases instead of moving. They love it." So, why was he telling me this? He explained his dilemma. He managed rental properties for a living, his business depended on HOA relationships, and if he refused Maria, she could make his life hell through delayed approvals, manufactured violations, and blocked maintenance access. "But I looked at her petition," he said. "I recognized 3 of the signatures. My tenants. I know their handwriting. Those aren't their signatures. She forged them. And if I take money to give false testimony, I become part of the fraud. If this goes to court and I'm involved, I lose everything." He chose integrity. "I'm telling you what you're facing. I'm staying neutral. I can't afford to actively fight her, but I won't lie for you. You deserve to know." I thanked him, told him I understood, told him I wouldn't forget that he'd warned me. Wednesday afternoon brought a different kind of harassment. Maria showed up flanked by 3 people in tailored suits, each with glossy binders and digital tablets. She spoke loudly enough for half the street to hear, introducing them as development consultants evaluating community amenities for our neighborhood enhancement project. They weren't surveyors at all, just her real estate colleagues dressed for the part, but with their tablets flashing maps and charts, they looked official to anyone passing by. They spent 2 hours walking around the lake, having deliberately loud conversations designed to be overheard. "Preliminary assessment shows approximately $2 million in development potential here," one said. "If community lake access rights can be established through proper HOA procedures," another added. "Environmental impact assessment would need county approval, of course," the third chimed in. They left business cards on car windshields for a company called Prestige Development Consulting. I looked it up later. It had been incorporated 6 days prior, and the effect was immediate. Neighbors approached me asking if I was selling the lake, if the HOA was buying me out, if developers had made offers. I had zero information about any of this, which made me look either uninformed about my own property or dishonest. Maria was controlling the narrative perfectly. Thursday morning, I found laminated signs staked around the lake perimeter. State Water Resources Department blazed across the top, followed by temporary facility closure notice. Legal jargon filled the rest, warning of penalties for tampering and listing a hotline number. The paper looked crisp, the print freshly laminated, designed to intimidate. I dialed the number and got nothing but a generic voicemail. Diane called the real Water Resources Department. They confirmed no such order existed, no inspection was scheduled, and no record of my lake in any database. Whoever put those signs up wanted neighbors to believe the state had shut me down. He also said that impersonating their department was a federal crime, and he was required to report it to internal investigations. We photographed the signs for evidence before I took them down. Friday morning brought an email that nearly gave me a heart attack. Subject line, temporary account restriction notice. It claimed to be from First National Bank, stating that due to a suspicious activity alert from a government agency inquiry regarding my business account, they'd placed a temporary 72-hour review hold on all transactions exceeding $500. Standard procedure when federal or state agencies request financial information, the email said. I couldn't pay suppliers, couldn't pay employees. Mortgage payment was set to auto-draft next week. Equipment financing was due in 3 days. I was on the phone with the number in the email, another generic voicemail, when Diane called me. "Stop," she said. "Look at the sender's email address. Really look at it." My real bank used firstnationalbanks.com. This email came from firstnational-security.com. There was a hyphen added. It was a phishing scam designed to panic me into clicking malicious links or calling a fake number to verify my account information. Diane called my actual account officer. No hold existed. No government inquiry, no restriction, just criminals trying to scare me into giving them access to my accounts. That same Friday afternoon, certified mail arrived. This one was real. Foreclosure warning from Midwest Home Loans. I'd missed 2 mortgage payments, $28.47 each month, because I'd lost $205,000 in contracts and had no income. The business loan was now in default since it was cross-collateralized with my house. Total amount, due to avoid foreclosure, $34,000 within 30 days. If I didn't pay, they'd accelerate the full $67,000 loan and begin proceedings to take my house. I sat at my kitchen table at 2 a.m. with a calculator and a pile of bills spread out like evidence of my own failure. Could I raise $34,000 in a month? Not without selling the lake at a fire sale price. 18 months of work. My entire dream. Just to keep a roof over my head and make sure Tommy didn't have to watch his uncle lose everything. But here's what changed my mind. Diane had been collecting every fake document we'd encountered, Bradley's original citation, photos of the water resources signs, the forged petition Kevin had told me about, the phishing email. She analyzed them all with a magnifying glass and her 20 years of expertise. Every single document had the same printing error. That 1 millimeter watermark offset in the exact same direction. The same font rendering from the same PDF template system. The same commercial-grade security paper from the same office supply chain. She even identified the brand. This wasn't amateur hour. This was a professional service that created fake government documents for paying clients. Diane used software I didn't even know existed to search forms on the dark web. She found a password-protected site advertising Apex Security Solutions with a full menu of services and prices. Authority figure, consultation for $5,000. Document template, library for $2,000. Multi-agency coordination for $10,000. Complete compliance theater for $25,000. And in a testimonials section, visible to anyone who accessed the site, was a review with the initials MR, Real Estate Professional, delivered exactly as promised. Lake access rights secured within the contracted timeline, 5 stars. Maria had left a 5-star review for her criminal contractor, as if she were rating a plumber. I was staring at that review on Diane's laptop screen when my doorbell rang. 9:47 p.m. I checked the security camera feed. A woman I'd never seen, professional clothes, holding an envelope, rental car parked at the curb. I opened the door. She didn't introduce herself. Just handed me the envelope and said, "You've been served." Inside was a lawsuit, not from Maria directly, from something called Lakeside Community Interest Group, an organization that, according to the filing date, had been incorporated exactly 6 days ago. They were suing me for $500,000 in damages for property value destruction and community resource misappropriation. I called Diane. She was already pulling up the incorporation papers online. "Joseph," her voice was tight, "it lists 3 founding members. I'm reading the names now." She paused. "Guess who signed as treasurer?" It was late when I finally sat down to actually read through the lawsuit. $500,000 in damages. Legal language I barely understood, but then I got to page 7. The section titled Evidence of Property Value Impact. And there, listed as Exhibit D, was something that made my hands go completely numb. It was an appraisal report for my property, dated from 3 months before I'd even purchased the land, before I'd met Maria, before any of this started. Someone had commissioned a professional appraisal of my property for development purposes before I owned it, before the lake existed, before I'd even signed the purchase agreement. And at the bottom of the page, in the section marked Commissioned By, there was a signature I'd never seen before, a name I'd never heard. But when Diane looked at it, her face went white. Week 3. Detective Morgan obtained a subpoena for Maria Rogers' bank records based on the mountain of evidence Diane and I had accumulated. When those records came back, Diane spent an entire afternoon analyzing them with the kind of methodical attention that comes from 20 years of following money trails for insurance fraud cases. What she found completed the picture. 5 months ago, a wire transfer for $50,000 hit Maria's account. Memo line, advance payment, Lake Access Development Agreement. Source, Prestige Property Development, LLC. The the same company whose name had appeared on that document I'd glimpsed Maria hiding. Over the next 3 months, Maria wrote 3 checks to Apex Security Solutions, $8,333 each, totaling exactly $25,000. Additional expenses included $12,000 to a printing company that specialized in security documents, $8,000 to a legal consultation firm that advised on HOA authority limits, and $5,000 in cash withdrawals that lined up perfectly with when she'd offered Kevin Walsh his bribe. Current balance in Maria's account, $2,400. She'd spent every penny of that $50,000 advance. The county clerk, one of Diane's old contacts from her investigation days, had accidentally CC'd an email chain that included Maria's correspondence with Prestige Property Development. Attached to one email was the complete contract. Diane and Detective Morgan obtained a copy through proper channels, and when they showed it to me, everything clicked into place like the final pieces of a puzzle you'd been staring at for months. The contract was dated 6 months before I'd even finished building my lake. Prestige Property Development, LC, was planning a luxury community expansion, and they needed a recreational water amenity for marketing purposes. Maria's role, secure HOA-approved community easement rights to my lake. Her compensation, if successful, $400,000. She'd already received the $50,000 advance 5 months ago. But here's the trap she'd built for herself. The contract had a condition precedent. Her entitlement to that $400,000 commission was contingent upon the HOA establishing legal standing for lake access and securing majority resident approval through proper procedures. And if she failed to deliver an executed easement by the contract termination date, which was exactly 3 weeks away, she had to return all advance payments within 30 days, plus interest at 12% per annum. $50,000 plus 3 months of interest at 12% meant she owed approximately $52,500 if this contract fell through. She had $2,400 in her bank account. She was trapped. Saturday evening, Diane invited me over. She'd spread everything across her dining room table, like a detective's murder board. Bank statements, contract printouts, timeline of every fake official visit, photos of forged documents, evidence from Eleanor and Rachel's cases. The pattern was undeniable. Maria had signed that contract in January, betting on my lake increasing property values, which it had by 30%. She took the advance immediately and spent it on Bradley's criminal services, fake document printing, legal advice on manipulating HOA rules, and bribes. Now her deadline was approaching, and she was financially ruined if she couldn't steal access to my lake. She can't stop, I said, staring at the numbers. Even if she wanted to back down, she's broke. She'd face fraud charges from the development company. She's as trapped as I am. Diane nodded. Which makes her desperate, and desperate people are the most dangerous. But they also make mistakes. She pulled out Detective Morgan's proposal for a sting operation. Someone would pose as a potential new client requesting Bradley's enforcement services. Maria would likely attend, desperate for any commission she could get. We'd record everything. The moment they described their criminal conspiracy on tape, Morgan would make arrests. The problem was obvious. I couldn't